Hi, this is Doug Moench, and you're listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast.
Yes, welcome back, Looney listeners. You are listening to Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast. This is episode 266. You are with your High Priest Aconchi Ray. Good day, everybody. And joining me on this sojourn in a very different ITK episode is, of course, one half, the left, Velvet Drape, I'll call him, Justin the Owl. Justin, welcome back.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you for having me. And thank you, as always, Loonies, for listening.
Yes, it's always good to have everyone back tuning in to this, the 266th, and if you look up into the sky, into the sky filled with the moon, you will see that it is a waxing gibbous, and that means that we'll be looking at the other side of the moon. Now, Justin, the way I've framed it, just bear with me here, I'm pretty proud of myself. The other side of the moon. So we're going to look at the other side of some of Moon Knight's creators, works that they've done that is not related to Moon Knight, but of course them being Moon Knight alumni, there's a connection there with Moon Knight. So we're going to be looking at Lords of the Ultra Realm by Doug Moench, the granddaddy of Moon Knight. This is a six-parter plus a special, Justin. So we're going to treat it kind of like an arc review. And my gosh, it's a huge arc. I've got to say that.
Quite a large story, yeah.
It is. But an enjoyable one and quite a different one as well. So before
Very
any
different.
of that... Yeah, it is. And thanks to... This was, for those that listened to a previous episode, Justin and I just chatted about doing this, and it kind of formulated on air, and so here we are, Justin. So before
I love it when stuff like that happens.
I love it when a plan comes together, just like Hannibal used to say.
Absolutely, yeah.
Before any of that as well, Justin, how are things going?
Better now. I was sick last week with a head cold.
Oh, yeah.
And we had some concert plans to go see Erasure in Boston, but the entire tour was canceled because of COVID stuff, so that was kind of a bummer. I was hoping that they would at least postpone the dates until the summer or fall, but they chose to cancel the whole tour, so it was a little bit of a bummer.
God.
But I'm doing much better now.
You're a huge music buff. I mean, some previous episodes will show that, and we've talked about music as well, and you've mentioned previously about your one of your favorite bands featured in a comic book, like advertised. You've got some music, which I've seen, Justin, on your Facebook
a little
profile.
bit of it kicking around. Yeah.
Gonna have to share with the loonies there, but I know you're using that for your own projects, which is I can't wait. Yeah, but you're a big music buff. Do you go to in the old days before the pandemic, do you regularly go to concerts?
For a while, I tried to go to at least one or two a year.
Wow,
there's not a lot of bands that I really want to see in live in performance, but it just so happened that there were several that were on tour over the last few years that I really wanted to see, and it worked out perfectly in that regard. And there were a couple that I got to do the meet and greet thing, and I love that.
Yeah.
I love being able to meet them. It's fantastic.
I mean, that kind of always amazes me as well, to be able to go to how do you go about getting meet and greets and getting to go behind stage and meeting your idols? That's a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, well, sometimes it's like the Facebook group will have like the insider stuff where you get like first dibs on that stuff. Or sometimes it will just be in a couple of my cases, it's just an upgrade to an existing ticket package. You just pay a little bit extra. They upgrade the ticket for that. And you just go to the venue early, and while the band are hanging around shooting the breeze with all the crew and people and been playing some pool and stuff, you get to hang out with them. It's fantastic.
Any of them like Iggy Pop, like just have a bowl of like green M&Ms or something, you know? It's a really specific request.
I don't know if I'm brave enough to do a meet and greet with Iggy Pop. I would like to say that I would be. That man's a little intimidating.
Well, I mean, how old is he? He's doing well. I mean, looks well for his age.
He's doing well.
Yeah,
I love Iggy Pop. Yeah.
Yeah,
he's just so intelligent that he's genius level, and that's always intimidating to me.
Well, Justin, I think I say this in the best way. I think Lords of the Underrealm. I think you need a PhD to read.
Yeah.
Not to say that Justin and I necessarily have one, but it is an immense tome, and I'm going to use a pun intended, by Doug Moench. It's a sweeping, epic tale. We'll get into it, loonies. If you haven't heard of it, please check it out. Before we get into the details, because Justin and I jumped ahead of myself, I just wanted to chat with you, that's all. A big thank you to all our sponsors, the Patroonies, of course, the first and foremost, and then our primary sponsors, Drew Toombs, who creates music under Toombs and Lurk Music, Daniel Doing, the creator of Fringe Night, CLZ Comics by Collectors, and Dreamland Comics from Schulenburg, Illinois, the online superhero store. So a big thank you to everyone there. But yeah, Justin, my gosh, and let it be known, loonies, that we got no feedback. Fair enough. I mean, I think this is really like the dark side of the moon, Justin. I don't think anyone knows this. How did you come about? How did you find out about this? Did you collect this back in the day, or?
No, well, back in the day, I did collect Who's Who. Okay. It was basically like the DC version of the handbook. Mm-hmm. That had character descriptions of everyone, and it had the large entry on the Lords of the Ultra Realm. So I read about the origin, and I got to see brief sketches, small little sketches of all the characters, and I thought they looked really cool. Okay. And the whole concept was really neat. But I didn't actually seek out the miniseries until quite a few. God, I think it was 20 years later I actually got it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's certainly worth getting. I'm just going to jump to availability. So it is obviously available in floppy form. I have ordered mine, Justin. It's going to take a while to get. So I kind of jumped on the pirate ship and secured some. Okay. Just because I wasn't able to get it in time, but it is readily available on the likes of eBay and maybe your LCS if you're lucky enough. Over in the US, you might be able to find them. I don't know. Would it be a bargain bin thing, Justin? I mean, they don't seem to be.
That's where I found mine. Yeah, I found all 6 issues plus the special for $1 in the dollar bin.
It's crazy. Really?
Yeah, it's
yeah. I mean, you and I were sharing the eBay. I mean, there were eBay. There's plenty on eBay as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, go check it out there. It's all available. Just only in floppy form. Am I correct, Justin? I don't know. I haven't come across any trades or.
Yeah, I don't think there's a collected edition of this. I don't think there's a digital edition of this anywhere. I don't even think I looked for it on Comixology.
Yeah,
I don't think it's anywhere.
Not. Yeah. No, I looked for it. It's not on Comixology. So that's kind of, if it's not there, you're not going to find it like digitally for sale, unfortunately. But like I said, if you sail the high seas, you may come across.
There's always a way.
There's always a way.
You'll find that pearl out there somewhere.
That's it. Well, I mean, let's get to it. I'm going to, as mentioned, this is the other side of the moon. I've got to stop announcing that I'm going to click the banner Justin. Just amateur hour here, but I'm still working with the technology. So, other side of the moon, and there I'm pointing to it, and that's even more amateurish. As I mentioned, it's based on the other side of one of the Moon Knight creators. So Justin and I will get into that. Released. We're going to talk mainly, I guess, about the issues 1 to 6, the main saga. So released between June and November 1986, and I'm going to say the subsequent year, 1987, was when the special came out. And you basically have these are an easy credits. Writer Doug Moench, who everyone will be aware of, pencilers, inker, and colorist Pat Broderick, and letterer John Workman. So Broderick doing the hard yards there, pulling the weight of the team.
Yeah, triple threat. He was doing all of it.
Yeah. And now, of course, if you haven't listened, what Justin and I will do, we'll go through a bare bones this time, provided by Wiki. I'm hoping, Justin, again, may I ask? You know, you always know it's a treat. It's a treat for me, at least. May I ask, Justin, if you may impart your tones? Yes?
Absolutely, yes.
Excellent. So Justin will be reading out the bare bones, a synopsis, and this will go, basically, it's a really general overview of the 6 issues, and then Justin and I will get into, first of all, some key moments, and we can get further deeper down into stuff like writing and art, themes, characters. I mean, there is a cast of thousands here, Justin.
There's a lot.
It makes me, I just marvel at Doug Moench's mind. I mean, he came up with all of this, and it seems all of it's well considered. It's akin to me. I just kept on thinking of J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter, how all these many characters. Yeah, and you mentioned Masters of the Universe.
Yeah, a little bit of that too. Just kind of all of these ideas. It just seemed like a feast of the imagination.
Yes. And then so we'll go through our notes, and then we'll cap it off with a moon rating system. Now, Justin, I have pulled the wool over your eyes in the prompt sheet. I'm not sure, is that your rating? I'm not going to give it away, but mine is an outdated one, so I'll leave that.
Oh, I did. Yes, I did actually put my rating in the right places.
Okay.
The last couple of times I've put it in yours and in Noel's. So this time I made sure to put it in the right place.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a correct rating.
Excellent. Well, mine is the rating from the Bendis issue that we did, because I copied and pasted.
Oh,
so,
yes.
But I'll keep my mark close to my chest, and I'll reveal it towards the end.
Oh, all right. I like that.
Now, Justin, if you'd be so kind as to read the bare bones. I'm just going to start off some music, Justin, and as it dims, please give us your lovely vocal cords. Here we go.
Lords of the Ultra Realm. Vietnam veteran Michael Savage, upon returning to America and after his journey to the Ultra Realm, was merged with Falkon, Prince of Bliss, after his death at the hands of his opposite, Maurkon, Prince of Rage. 7 Princes of Light existed in the Ultra Realm. Erosanda, the Prince of Love, the previously mentioned Falkon. Krishlar, the Prince of Peace. Kontentos, the Prince of Grace. Sain, the Prince of Order. Satorana, the Prince of Enlightenment. And Viridium, the Prince of Life. As did their opposites, the 7 Princes of Darkness. Lashtarr, the Prince of Madness. Previously mentioned Maurkon. Mortanos, the Prince of Death. Myridian, the Prince of Hate. Shatragon, the Prince of Chaos. Squamonton, the Prince of Greed. And Zorla, the Prince of War. Michael Savage as Falkon travels to the Ultra Realm, eventually killing all the other princes and thus becoming the overlord of the Ultra Realm, which he recreates with princes and princesses in place of the all-male princes that existed previously. The special issue was set in this recreated Ultra Realm and dealt primarily with the princes and princesses of love, Eros and Sanda, and hate, Mira and Viridium.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Justin. A very general overview. I mean, as mentioned, Justin, you and I know how in-depth this thing is. Overall impressions then, this is a far cry from Moon Knight, but overall, what did you make of this huge tale?
I love it because I love a good, deep kind of metaphysical story on occasion to balance out some of the other crazy stuff that I read. And so when I'm looking for something like that, I immediately think of stories like this. Because it's fantastical. There's a lot of imagination going on here, but there's some really deep kind of almost very spiritual concepts going on that are really cool. The whole destruction of the ego thing and the balancing of light and dark and manifesting a gray to kind of keep the whole thing together. I love it. I love all that stuff. And for me, like the whole cosmic balance thing is something that it has made a lot of sense to me on a spiritual level.
Yeah, I mean, there certainly is a lot of that in depth as well. I mean, the play of, I guess, the mirrors and reflections. I mean, they literally use mirrors as gateways between the Ultra Realm and Earth. What do they call Earth again? So the something world.
The Foundation world.
Foundation world, yeah. So that, I think, is the basis for it. But yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. It's such an epic thing. You could potentially get lost a lot in the characters, but if you take your time with it, you certainly can. Speaking of the special, which I read after the 6-parter, again, with the doubling, literally the doubling of the 7 Princes of Light and the 7 Princes of Darkness into, 28 princes and princesses. So you've got a huge cast as well. But I loved also the parallels. You see the mirroring again of the Foundation world with Michael Savage and Janice Portinari. But you see also that with Scala and Falkon as well. So very in-depth, very different from anything you may have read if you're a Moon Knight fan and or a Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu, street level. This is not street level at all. It's really fantastical. I think that's how I described it to you, Justin. Yeah. So, I mean, key points, Justin. What do you want to kick off for this huge tale?
I think probably the biggest key moment is the start of it with the fusion of Michael Savage and the Lord of Bliss, Falkon, because that really set off the whole thing and kickstarted the whole story. So right off the bat, you have Michael Savage going into this arcade, and these punks are coming up to him and giving him a whole bunch of grief, and rather than lay into them, which he's still in his military gear, so he's a military guy, he's a Vietnam vet. Instead of laying into them, he just lets this guy beat on him, and that's when the whole shift happens. And I love that. That's such a cool way to start the story, because it's such an unexpected introduction to this realm. This seemingly petty fight taking place in this video arcade suddenly creates this gateway to another world that's actually a repository for all the light and dark elements of our world. It's really cool. Yeah,
I think it's strange as well. I thought it was set in the not so distant future. It might be when it was written, but I think Janice still refers to you're in the 80s. So this was written in 1986, but I got the way that the punks were dressed, it seemed to me almost as if their impression of the future, so if that kind of makes sense. I wonder if it was in 1989 or whatever, because made in 1986, and if it's in the future, because it looked very much like, I don't know, like Back to the Future kind of their idea of what the future is. But yeah, what I found really interesting with Michael Savage, the introduction, is I think from the outset, and as you mentioned, Justin, the thing that kicks it all off, the thing in the Ultra Realm is very like black and white, is what Doug Moench calls it. The purpose and the destinies of people are very clear cut, whereas on the Foundation world, things are more grey. And I think with the introduction of Michael Savage, going into some of his Vietnam War past, there's that kind of lingering doubt as well of did the enemy turn him? Like he was captured, right, from his platoon. Was he fighting for the Americans, or was he actually brainwashed and used, by the Viet Cong to I don't know what happened. He doesn't really go into it, but I think Moench really wants to establish this kind of greyness that Mike Savage has, and that kind of bleeds over into the Ultra Realm when Savage is kind of fused with Bliss. He actually, there's a little bit of darkness in him as well as light, which they also mention. It's very strange. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Justin. I think the people in the Ultra Realm, like a Lord of Light, there's always a little bit of darkness in there as well that they always mention. But I think Mike Savage brings that out a bit more because of his heritage, so to speak. Yeah.
Right. And just his presence, just being there, somebody from the Foundation world that is all gray. The Foundation world is just gray. That's all that Earth is. So just the presence of him being there, suddenly there's this little piece of gray in amongst all this black and white. Yeah,
and it's very interesting. I mean, if we're just to jump towards the end, which, again, talking about epicness, he transcends into another being altogether, the Overlord of the Ultra Realm. And jumping kind of to the special, it's really interesting that he's kind of tainted the whole world or the universe, and there's conversations with the princes and princesses about, it's the Overlord. He's not, like, for one thing, he's not in that bubble, or he's not in that cage where the previous one was or previous ones were. He's a new thing, and again, it's because of his background coming from the Foundation world that he's kind of brought things in. And in that special, there's that scene with what was it? Karlek, is that the name? I can't remember the names. The son, Carol, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
He's playing with a little kind of little beast, and the mum's going, we never used to have them in the world until the new Overlord came. So it's a bit of a comment then, I guess, on planet Earth, on us, so
definitely.
But the fusion of Mike Savage was really cool. I thought there was also a particular fusion as well with Janice Portinari. What did you make of her character?
I really liked her. I thought she was cool as you're kind of the eyes of the reader through her, witnessing all of this crazy stuff happening from both angles, because her incarnation as Scala in the Ultra Realm also goes through quite a bit of stuff during this story. But Janice is really stuck on the side of Earth while Michael is in the Ultra Realm, and she's trying to piece together all the stuff that's happening. And I really like her character. She's very strong and resourceful and smart and sassy. Doug Moench writes a good sassy woman.
She had a very interesting introduction, I thought, to Mike Savage. In issue 1, she literally just comes up to him, like he's pensive and just kind of walking down the street, and he's kind of looking at his old hood. It's been 10 years or so since the war, but he's kind of reliving some stuff. And she just comes up to it, and she ends up in the diner with him having a meal with. She's very kind of pushy, I'd say.
This is pretty forward, yeah.
Yeah, because there was a little bit of me thinking, oh, do they know each other? And it's like I was rereading it back. Oh, no. She's just like a reporter. She just has gone up to him, and but she has a role to play. I mean, she eventually brings together Eddie and Tank. They're friends. Eddie's a friend from the gym, of all places, for Michael Savage. Michael Savage, Slammin' Savage, a heavyweight boxer, had some success there. So we know that Mike Savage, and it's in his name, is quite adept at fighting. So we get that first off, although he chooses not to against the punks, that sort of stuff. And Tank is an ex-fellow brothers in arms, I guess. Brother in arms from Vietnam.
And he was another one who was kind of skeptical about what happened to Michael over there, because he heard all the rumors about, when Michael was a prisoner, was he turned by the enemy? Was he converted or whatever? There was all this time that wasn't accounted for, and it created a lot of mystery. So,
Yeah, I mean, and again, going into some detail, you see some flashbacks. I was really interested in that military background of Savage, and you see him caught, you see him tortured, like there's hundreds of spikes.
Pins in him,
And then this kind of thing of breaking him emotionally, and then I had to smirk a little at that next panel, after torturing him. They force him to look at like a naked lady.
They're just parading her in front of him, and he can't do anything about it. Which I guess if you're a man, a heterosexual man, and that's out in the middle of a war zone, that is kind of tantamount to torture.
that would be. But I was thinking though, if you'd been pricked with pins all day and tortured, I mean, the last thing you'd be thinking about would be your sexual drive. But I thought that was quite funny in that sense. The Vietnam War background for Mike Savage was very grey, and I think that was intentional for Doug Moench. And we even it's not really resolved. I don't think ever. I don't think it came to ever kind of we knowing whether he was on one part or the other. So I like that he kept that intentionally gray. That was cool, because I was expecting to see around maybe issue 5 or 6 some type of maybe subtle revelation about that, but it didn't happen, and I was happy that it didn't. And it very much focuses, I think it's fair to say, I mean, you do get the mirroring again. You get some things that happen on our world, but there's a lot of focus on, I mean, again, there's a lot of characters to get through. One of the other key moments I had was, I put in here, madness on your shoulder. I thought that was a really fun thing. Yes. So, what is it? Lashtarr, I think, is the Lashtarr is the prince of madness, and he's kind of this guy with a big mane of hair, and he embodies madness. But he has this little lady, literally a little lady, on his shoulder, which you don't see at first, and she's covered in a green kind of cloak, which looks like just a cloak for Lashtarr. But she's literally like the devil on your shoulder, and I thought that was such a funny, in a good way, like a funny creation of Doug Moench to have it. And so she jumps ship, and we hear that she's jumped ship previous as well. She had been with Maurkon as well. So, but she jumps ship over to Savage / Bliss, and she starts kind of infecting him with her malicious, I guess, thoughts or devious thoughts. But
devious and chaotic as well. Very chaotic and often violent in nature. But I think she was a great introduction because, again, we're talking about some really surreal things, and along the way we see many varied creatures like dragons, and one that I remembered from the special, there's a spotty man. He had this. Yes. I want to know more about him. So, one of the underlings. And there's little ogres and trolls running around, and all kinds of weird creatures, tribes of things.
I mean, so this just rife for exploration. This world, the Ultra Realm, but the madness on your shoulder, I thought was really cool. I mean, it features on the cover of issue 2 or 3, I think. So that was much of a feature. I really enjoyed that. And Lashtarr, he kind of gets done pretty quickly early on, I guess.
Actually, right after the voice abandons him, actually.
Yes.
She and then she also, I also liked the twist of her little lie where she very cunningly tells Falkon, Michael Savage, that she's embedded her roots into his heart, because she sticks her little tendrils into his shoulder, and so she says, if you pull me out, you'll kill yourself, and so I thought that was a really cool little ruse as well, to kind of get him to keep her around a little longer.
I mean, she, as I said, like, she claims to be a friend and stuff and help him out, but she really is a bit more of a nuisance than anything else. And her demise at the end, I thought, was again like very surreal. Michael Savage, again, Bliss, goes to the Foundation world, our Earth, through a mirror, and it's really funny. There are just these two ordinary guys just installing a mirror, and he hands them the voice. He says, you can have it or whatever, and the guys go, my God,
she's yours.
Yeah, it's like, my God, this is real. She talks as if it's like, how freaked out would you be if you were handed like a Tom Thumb or a voice the size of that?
Yeah. And then she bursts into flames, I think, at the end.
Yes. Yeah. I couldn't remember the thing, but she needed to go back with a host. She's very symbiotic.
That's true. Yeah. She needed a host, so she burst into flames when she went too long without one.
Yeah, but I think
that would have freaked me out. I think I would have needed therapy after that if I'd been installing a mirror and witnessed that.
me too. All I could think of was Chucky. To kill a doll or something. But
burn it with fire.
Yeah, exactly. But she must have needed someone from the Ultra Realm, because I was thinking, like, wouldn't she just then latch on to one of those installers? But yeah, she must need one of the princes, or one of the people from over there. So any other thoughts there, Justin, on that particular case, or I mean I've seen you've put some notes here as well on other things.
Oh no, not about that. The madness part was handled really well, and I like that they kept it going for a whole issue, that they didn't resolve it right away. He managed to keep that plot going, and I really liked that.
Well, I mean, there's just so much to really fit in as well. So I think Doug Moench has done like really well with giving you enough. I mean, they're really like teasers as well. I mean, so if you look at the likes of, for me, I wanted to know more on Zorla and Squamonton.
Squamonton.
Yeah, the Prince of Greed. I mean, he had a funny little moment, I thought. He was talking about Midas and Midas turning things into gold, and he's kind of going, bah, Midas does that. He can't do this. And he touches something, and I'm assuming it turns into just gruel or just something quite disgusting.
Type of greasy slop for him to consume.
Yeah. But he basically just feeding his face the whole time. Wasn't much, but Zorla was a pretty cool. Aesthetically, I thought Zorla looked really cool. Just the hot red and the mohawk and the Prince of War. Again, I'm thinking of Ares. Very, very cool.
Definitely. And the colors too. I'm glad you mentioned that with the bright red. The colors were really cool in this.
Oh, yeah.
All of each of the characters have their own kind of distinct color theme, and not only the characters, but just each page is just bursting with color. They used a different type of paper on this.
Okay.
The series, I think was it called Mando paper or something like that, but it wasn't the traditional stock that DC was using at the time. It was a heavier coated paper.
Okay.
So the kind of like the Marvel fanfares that we were talking about with Moon Knight. So I think that really helped this series, because each page is like just a feast of colors.
Oh, I mean, and let's talk about the art as well. I mean, the colors are from the same person, Broderick. Broderick's art is just really, really good. I think I mentioned to you there are tinges to me that were reminiscent of like underground comics, just the way that things were hatched. But they were very clear. The figures were great. I mean, quite fluid, and the designs of the princes were just it's really really good. I did like he came on a bit later, Shatragon.
Shatragon is cool.
Yeah, to me he had the most Marvel/DC kind of look. It reminded me a little bit of Swarm, that sort of thing. But he had he had this kind of green body that was made of something. He was, if anything, I was a little disappointed that he kind of snuffed it pretty quickly. But again, Moench had to go through a lot of these characters as well, so you don't really get to flesh out. Maybe in another lifetime there would be spin-off series on, good old Shatragon and Squamonton and Zorla that you could actually, discover more about them. But I think still it was done, like the characters were serviced well in the fact that you got a good enough tease or a knowledge of what they were all about.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was hard to juggle that many characters, like you said, but I think he did a good job giving all of them pretty ample time in each issue. I mean, some of them weren't really seen a whole lot, and like you said, they were kind of all taken out pretty easily at the end. But I don't know. Maybe this series would have done better if it was a little bit longer. Maybe another couple of issues would have helped to give some more spotlight to some of these other characters that we didn't get to see a whole lot of. But I think for the most part, he did a good job balancing everyone.
Yeah, I think so too as well. I mean, because I was about to say again with the military history of Savage, it would have been good to see more. But then I was thinking, no, I think it meant put in enough there for this story. I mean, you didn't really. It would be fun, like as you'd say, probably in another arc or something. But for this particular story with the six issues, I think it was balanced really well. You didn't really need to know any more or less. And as we said, there are 14 other princes to deal with, so there was plenty there. In case listeners, because sorry, Justin, I'm going to map this out as well. I mean, the synopsis did really well, but I mean, it's really hard to do it justice, I guess, without discussion because there's so much in it, right? But essentially, listeners, as further on to the bare bones, what happens? Mike Savage gets fused with the Prince of Bliss. There is a continual toing and froing in the ultra realm between light and dark, right? And it recycles every time. And then they get new overlords. It's a very fine balance. I think you mentioned as well, Justin, and sometimes the Princes of Light will tip the scale and they'll kind of do the Princes of Dark, and then they'll come back and they'll kind of then counter that. So there's all that kind of going on at the moment. Bliss comes back with Savage as his fused thing, and he ends up saving both the Ultra Realm and the Earth from a potential, because Maurkon has been let loose on Earth. Is that correct?
The Lord of Rage is loose on Earth, and while he's been there's been an increase in all of this hostility. Like all of these violent outbreaks are happening all across. It starts in the United States, and then it just spreads across. While he's stuck on Earth, the Foundation Realm. And he realizes that the only way that he can get back is by absorbing the life force of human beings. And he realizes that it's going to take him a while to do that. Right, so he eventually amasses a mountain, not just a pile of bodies, but a mountain of bodies in some back alley. And
all in an alley. Yeah, me too.
I have to laugh at that scene too, right? Because there's got to be like 50 or 60 bodies in there. And there's that many people missing, and however long period they should have gotten the National Guard in there or something.
Well, I was about to say Maurkon's not Maurkon doesn't worry about being discreet. You know, it's not like he's killing people from one town to the next. He's just doing it in one area and just piling them on in the alley, which is, pretty funny. There's a homeless dude, I think from memory, he goes around, oh, what's this? And he sees this just mountain of bodies there. But you're right. So we do see that. I mean, there's the same Maurkon picking up two lovely ladies. They eventually are like desiccated, sucked to dry. There are a couple of other guys that wander into the alley. So we see Maurkon slowly gaining enough power. So there's that happening on Earth as well. Bliss is trying to counter that. And eventually there's this whole thing about him not acting like the Bliss of old. You know, there's a little bit more zing in him, a little bit more savage. You know, there's no accident. So he goes through the Lords and he transcends. At the same time, we see Janice, Tank, and Eddie meet who happens to be the Overlord of the Ultra Realm, but he gives up his title and Mike Savage, Bliss. Ascends into becoming the other new Ultra Overlord of the Ultra Realm. It's a huge. That is it in a very general way, but you get to meet all the other princes along the way, as we said, and he cuts a swathe through all of them.
He does. Even the Overlord at the very end. He has to slice his way through the Overlord because the Overlord says the only way that you can transcend is to kill me. Yes. It's really cool. That's another one of the themes that I like in this is kind of you have to get rid of everything. Yeah, it's a purging of everything, the good and the bad, the old and the new. I like that. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah,
it's like as we mentioned, there's a lot to kind of take from it. From this tale as well, and I think that introduction of the grey. I mean, towards the end of the special, that's one of the things I love from the Doug Moench dialogue or writing in that. He's mentioning something like the Ultra Realm used to be black and white, and now there's a little bit of grey in it because of Mike Savage as the Overlord. And then he questions: is Earth the other way round? Like, is it more black and white and less grey? So you get those lovely kind of comparisons and parallels between the two. Really enjoyable stuff. As we mentioned, another key moment I had here was becoming the Overlord. As we mentioned, a big thing. Kind of reminded me of. I always go back to like Akira. You know, with Tetsuo, like just going this other level. Yeah. It had that sense because he's now this golden kind of hovering guru. And again, if we are to go into the special, talk a little bit about the special, which occurs, I guess, way into Savage's tenure as an Overlord. We see the ramifications of that and the princes and princesses. Now, Justin, this special really did open the doors, and I did notice on the cover for mature readers only. And
that was a wise decision for them to put that on there.
Absolutely.
I mean, the miniseries was pretty heavy. I mean, we had the stuff with Michael Savage being a POW, and some of the violence was pretty heavy, and some of the dialogue was pretty heavy. The themes were pretty deep, but in the special, Doug Moench ramped it right up. He said, "All right, this is adults only from here on out."
And I'd like to quote you, Justin, in just a chat we had online. You've described the special to have some racial slurs, incest, and patricide this time around, and that's what you get, listeners. You get. I was struggling, to be honest, Justin. Number one, to figure out who was whose parents in the Ultra Realm, because the mother, who is literally also the father, because the princes have split into a male and female counterpart. You have that, and then you have the likes of the evil oh god, what's his name? Carol.
Carol and Larak.
And Larak, yeah. When you read it, it's a lot more straightforward because the names are reversed. But yeah, I haven't read it out loud. But Carol and Larak, yeah, and then you have Larak boning his father, who's the mother. it's to kill him. The idea is to kill him as well. This was a lot, Justin.
Yeah, he grabs his mother for a lovely carriage ride that ends in incest. He rapes her repeatedly, so that the father will obviously know what's happening and get infuriated and fly over to challenge him and then the son will get his goal finally of taking his vengeance out on his dad. And at the same time, because his mother is kind of also his father, they're the same being. He's raping his father at the same time. It's wow. Yeah. and there's a lot to take from this.
There's a lot to take there. I'll tell you, I'd much prefer to stay on Foundation World for the stuff they're doing in the Ultra Realm. But we also see like a parallel again in the Foundation World. In our world, there are two. There is a son paralleled with Carol that finds out after his 18th birthday, finds out that he has a brother. And finds out that his mother has had a relationship with another man. And I found this actually really refreshing, Justin. 1986, back in the day, I'm assuming interracial relationships weren't that common. I mean, just from my memory of it. So this is quite forward thinking from Doug Moench.
I really like that twist. I thought that was so cool, and having the parallel with the Ultra, that was really smart, really good writing. Yeah. So and the whole twist at the end with the two brothers, that was really good too.
Oh, it doesn't that end in a terrible way? I mean, Justin and I are lingering on the incest and the patricide on the Ultra Realm. Back in our world, the father, I think you'd agree with me, Justin, that his reaction was a little bit over the top. He went into his hardware store with a shotgun.
He heard sounds of a scuffle. He went in with a loaded shotgun, just emptied it at the first sign of a struggle.
Yeah. And his victim was his own son, who, unfortunately was in there scuffling with his brother. So who managed to escape. So he escapes with a bloodied arm. We see him at the end, but tragedy all round, and in the Ultra Realm we see the father slain as well. The sword just gone straight through him. So I think what you take from this basically is that I think Michael Savage has kind of cocked things up a little. He's as the Overlord, he's made it so much more complicated. He's essentially separated the Prince of Hate into the Prince and Princess of Hate, and now you have relationships like these relationships to deal with. So he's certainly made it a lot more complex. It was a lot more black and white, again, as Doug Moench said, prior to Savage. Now it's a whole lot more grey. But yeah.
And then you have infinite potential for these things to happen, like the prince and princess of love and hate falling in love and having this illegitimate offspring. There's so much more potential for random chaotic acts like that to happen in the new Ultra Realm, because it does have that gray, whereas before that would never have happened. There was no potential for any of the lords of light or darkness to have an offspring, but now that's a thing.
Yeah. Oh, so you're talking about also the interrelationships between, say, because there was
the two sides,
the two sides, because there was an admittance from the Princess of Light or Hope, I think it was Hope, and she admitted that it wasn't rape. Her other son came from a what's the word? Consensual No, is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Relationship with the Prince of Hate. So again, you have that dynamic of, oh no, the two parents are now at loggerheads because of this affair, essentially. So many things, but also the added complexity of having like the two symbols of whatever light, love, hate, hope, but having them as two separate beings, and having, as you're saying, offspring, because again, a different dynamic than just having one sole person to embody hate or chaos and stuff. So, it's interesting to know. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, what were to happen if, like, the Prince of War got together with the Princess of Peace and they had an offspring? What would that offspring be like? It just, like I said, it opens up all these possibilities for what the Ultra Realm could turn into. You can see, and it's very dark. Like, all signs point to dark because, I mean, we see what happens with Carol and Larak. I mean, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It all turns to dark as well, because I was thinking, even if you have a combination, say, of two of the, like one, if you have a combination of one faction or two factions of light, hope and love, whatever, you'd still get conflict, because it's kind of like you've had an affair with someone, so it could only lead to like a mess, and maybe two factions of dark, if they combined, may become like a stronger thing, because they're both kind of on the same, chaos and hate, they'd feed off each other. Exactly. Many combinations to think of. I'm sure Doug Moench planned out a few more other tales to happen with these. I mean, he's got a nice chessboard here. Let's just say that.
I'd love to ask him someday if he had future volumes planned for the Ultra Realm or future series planned. It would be cool to know what else he had in store for this place.
Well, that's a good idea, actually, Justin, because I was always trying to think of an excuse to try and contact Doug Moench back, and have it tied into ITK, because we know he's done a whole heap of other things. But since we've got the other side of the moon, we can talk about Doug's. This is essentially his creation, right? I mean, it's under DC, so he's probably relinquished the rights to them. But in essence, probably, it's his. Yeah. Any other notes here, Justin, that you'd like to talk about in either the six-parter or the special?
Well, I mentioned about the colors, about how I love the colors, and Pat Broderick's art is fantastic. It's like kind of old school fantasy art combined with, like you were saying, underground art and a little bit of contemporary at the time, 1986 comic book art. But he's great. I can't really compare his art style to anybody else. I mean, I see a little bit of John Byrne in there in places, but he's got his own distinct style, and I really like it. The first time I saw his art was in a hilarious DC book called Cops, and it was an adaptation of an animated show and a toy line that was basically about cops and robbers, but what if cops and robbers were all cyborgs? Oh, it was ridiculous. It was so fun. And he did the artwork for that comic book, but he moved on to do other things. And I remember my favorite Pat Broderick art was in Doom 2099, when he went back to Marvel, and he did the first, I think, 25 issues of that series, and I think that's his best stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you certainly, I'm very limited with underground comics, say, but I just get little bits of crumb in that, only because of the hatching and sometimes the expressions on the face. It's kind of a mixture of, I don't want to say cartoonish, but there is a very kind of like caricature kind of look to it. But then the style can really change as well into more of the, as you mentioned, more of the contemporary comic book art of the time back in the 80s as well. So I think it's an amazing thing that the inking, the penciling, and the coloring, because we're talking about hyper detail. I'm not talking. A lot of the backdrops, what adds to it and makes the Ultra Realm such a distinct place is the landscape. and the buildings, the architecture, and you see that all in the art, which is fantastic.
I love too how in the Ultra Realm, pretty much everything that happened there was reflected on Earth. Like at the very end, around issue 5 and 6, you see both hate and death kind of in full effect, encircling the last remaining Temple of Light. And as they're doing that on Earth, there's all of this conflict breaking out, all these racial fighting, and these the president's giving out nuclear codes, and the nuclear silos are all opening. And I mean, we don't know what's going on, what countries are at war with each other, but we presume there's something going on. And I liked that. It was nice because at the very end of that series, you had a lot of tension. You saw that both realms were in peril of being destroyed because of what was going on. And I thought that was cool. It added a lot of high stakes to the story.
Yeah, no, absolutely as well. And again, it just obviously just reinforces the fact of how integral both worlds are to each other, how they kind of affect each other, and of course how Savage affects the Ultra Realm by no end. By the time we get to the special. Myridian and Mortanos were pretty cool to see, riding the dragons. There was also that in the special as well. There was a parallel that you see with the Offspring, and there was a little parallel of the dragons, and you see when the dragon's old enough, the mother dragon will just leave them and off they go, that sort of thing. That kind of reflected the tale of Carol and Larrick as well. Myridian was cool. I thought he had the reminded me of the Batman who laughs. He had like the visor, and Cyclops.
The Cyclops visor. Yeah.
Cyclops visor. But it was cool how Bliss / Savage was not affected by it at all. And it's like, oh, what are you doing? How could you not be affected by this? And then he gets done. Really, really fun stuff.
Tank and Eddie weren't so lucky though. They were disintegrated by. His heat, and I thought that was kind of strange because when they picked up Zorla's weapons to try to defend Michael, the caption read something about how that they surrendered to hate, so that was kind of the bridge that they burned on. But I don't know. I don't think that either one of them picked up those weapons with hatred in their hearts. I thought that they were doing it to protect their friend, which is kind of the opposite.
Yeah, exactly.
So I thought that was a little strange. I think that was the only part of the last issue I had a problem with. I mean, I didn't have a problem with either one of those characters dying, but I thought that explanation of it was a little weird. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, true. I agree as well. And not that I had a problem with them dying, but yeah, it was one of those, like, where the deaths was kind of felt, at least for me. It's like, is Bliss going to kind of resurrect them, or are they going to come back? Because it was a little sad, because you do see a little bit of their arc along the way. But no, indeed, they did bite the dust. So, pretty cool. Justin, if there are no other, I'm just going to go through. I'm having a quick look. Zorla, there was a fight with Zorla again. Actually, I thought it would have been cool to see a bit more of Zorla fight again. The God of War. Prince of War.
Prince of War, yeah.
I'd maybe it's my Tomes of Evil leanings, Justin, but I just found the Princes of Dark a lot more interesting than the Princes of Light.
I did too. They also looked a lot cooler.
They did. Yeah,
their looks were a lot more colorful and interesting. Yeah,
I can understand why you and Russell now do the Tomes of Evil. The bad guys have more fun.
Always, they're always more fun.
Well, I mean, if there isn't anything else, Justin, shall we cap this off with a rating? Let's go back to our Konishu's rating system.
Yeah, let's do that, yeah.
So, for Lords of the Realm, we're going to do it in one big bundle, issues 1 to 6, plus the special, which came out thereabouts a year later. What would you give this creation from none other than the Godfather of Moon Knight, Doug Moench?
I would give this an 8 out of 10, which is a big, beautiful yellow man. I love stories that are like an explosion of imagination, where you can tell that the writer and or artist, that their imagination is firing on all cylinders, and they can throw anything in there, and there's a point where it's all going to work, or none of it's going to work. But it's okay, because it's part of the process. It's part of the creation process, and I love that. Because there's some stuff that Doug Moench has created for DC that hasn't worked. There's been a couple of miniseries that didn't catch on, and this one I don't think caught a lot of interest. But I love the themes in this, and I love that he was willing to delve into these deep metaphysical, psychological themes in a 6-issue comic book. I think it was really cool.
Yeah, you can tell it is as you said, it is a passion project. I am willing to bet that this wasn't like editorial saying, Doug, can you write this? Because the level of detail and attention to detail from Doug Moench, and the layers that the storytelling gives, it's something that he obviously wanted to tell. And he was fortunate enough through DC to tell it. So yeah, I mean, not too sure. I mean, how history shows that it didn't kick on, so maybe it didn't prove to be that popular. But I'm glad that Moench did get to use it as an outlet to, to flourish his creative brush, so to speak. Because it is it's great. I've changed my mark there, Justin. Not 6 out of 10 from the Bendis issue. I'm giving it an 8 as well. Beautiful
fantastic.
Yellow Man. It was a really enjoyable read, very different from Moon Knight. But if you love to dive into like these different universes, these whole new worlds, I think you would really enjoy this. There's like a cast of thousands, as we said. There's a lot to glean from the parallels between the two worlds. They world hop as well, so there's a lot of fun in that. I mean, you see Maurkon and Falkon, on Earth, so that's always a bit fun as well. The support characters, I think, were really well done, and moving on into the special, like a year later, it almost feels like time has passed since the Overlord was dubbed or given to Mike Savage, and so you get that sense of time, like. Time really adds to the sense of grandness to this tale, and I think it's done really well all across the 6 issues and the special. 86 again, and Doug Moench, you will. I mean, this is different from modern comics in that you will get there's a lot of dialogue and text in there, but do not be dissuaded by that at all. Just make sure you have a lot of time, just absorb it all, because it's a really fun read. So again, unfortunately, it's not available readily, but you can buy. You can search for the floppies, and you can buy it. It would be great if it was collected, Justin. I mean, because then
I think it would make a nice single volume. Yeah, you could fit the 6 issues in there and the special, and probably some extra stuff, some sketches, some character sketches and things. I think would be cool.
Well, there's some bonus material, wasn't there, in issue 1 and subsequent issues where Doug kind of pens in and says, look, this is, we were able to get this gatefold cover, which he was very happy for, but this was the other art, which ended up being on the cutting room floor. But I'm glad he added it in because it's just great all round.
That's another reason it's kind of good to get these floppies actually too, because you get all of Doug Moench's editorial stuff at the back, where he talks about in the first few issues he talks about the creation of the ultra realm, and there's another issue where he talks, I think, really at length just about Pat Broderick and how they started working together, and all of Pat's other projects. And I love that. You get a sense in those little editorial columns at the end of each issue that Doug was super excited about this project, and he was really happy to see what people would think about it. And yeah, I love it. I love all that.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, I haven't read all those all the editorial stuff at the end, but I want to go back and kind of read what Doug has to say, because it is very interesting. Though he writes a little bit on the bonus material, which I read, which was pretty cool, pretty fascinating. So definitely check it out, Loonies. I don't think you'll be disappointed at all. Mm-hmm. So, Justin, I think that concludes our journey into the Ultra Realm. I hope you found that. I found it absolutely fascinating, riveting, and great. It's great to share our thoughts with you about it, and thank you for putting me onto it as well. Thank you. Yeah, Yeah, very different. You always come up with some really obscure but hidden gems, which I think is one of the a nice little segue.
I see what you did there.
A nice little segue into something that you've been working on that might be out very soon.
Yes, the Lost Library of Legends, my comic book podcast debut project, which I will be co-hosting with Russell from my co-host from Tomes of Evil as well, should be hopefully launched sometime before the end of the year.
Okay.
The end of the month, rather.
End of the month. Oh, wow, I was about to say
the end of the year. At the end of the month, February.
Okay.
So hopefully, sometime towards the end of the month it will be ready to go. And I should have hopefully 4 or 5 episodes right off of the bat, I think.
Okay, awesome. Fantastic. Keep an eye out for that as well. I'll let you know, Loonies, and share all the relevant links to that. But a big thank you, Justin, as always. It's always fun to have you on.
I was glad you liked this series. It's a weird one, but I'm glad you liked it.
Well, no, thank you. Yeah, no, it's great. I always look forward to your recommendations. So, if you've got any more, and again, as always, we've got some. If you want to do some bonus episodes, I've got a few ideas already rolling around, and we've talked about it in our previous episodes. So, there's plenty to do there. So, a huge thank you.
Yeah.
Next phase, Loonies, just keep an eye out on the moon. I mean, that's your best gauge. Just look up into the sky, and Khonshu will tell you that. In other words, I've still got to work things over. I'm not even sure. I haven't even got my prompt sheet what phase of the moon it is, but check it out on the Saturday. I always pick the phase of the moon on the Saturday, and see what it is, and you'll get a rough bearing of what we're going to be doing next week. As always, a big thank you to our patronies at the top of the show. So a big shout out again to Daniel, Drew, Justin, Derek, Kyle, Frank, Wayne, Jordan, Josh, James, Anthony, Russell, Michael, Mario, and Gavin. A huge thank you, guys. And you too can become a Patreon member on patreon.com/ITK Moon Knight. Also as well, CLZ Comics. Please check out collectdoors.com. Daniel Doing's Fringe Night, his Patreon page, patreon.com/FringeNight27. Drew Toombs with his awesome music. Listen to it on SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/Toombs with a Z, or Lurk Music on Bandcamp at lurkmusic.bandcamp.com. And finally, if you use the code MOON, you'll get 20% off Dreamland Comics, so check out their online store. Finally, we're part of The Collective, not a collective, The Collective. Hopefully the Lost Library of Legends will be on there soon, Justin. I'm looking forward to that.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, hopefully in the near future. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But brilliant shows, the likes of Dread or Dead, the DCAU animated, the DC Animated Universe podcast, and of course Tomes of Evil, a super villain podcast. Just a few of the 30, 20, I don't know, shows as part of The Collective. Finally, you can find us on email. Please send us your thoughts. If you give Lords of the Ultra Realm a read, let us know what you think. But there's a discussion thread up in our groups and on our pages, so if you so feel inclined, just drop a line there. Otherwise, email feedback@itkmoonnight.com. We've got a website, itkmoonnight.com, and we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Discord, Get Vocal, and Podchaser. And incidentally, again, Podchaser, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to leave a review, that would be very cool. We can expand the show in that way. Justin, a huge thank you once again. I hope to hear you soon on Tomes of Evil. You guys are killing it over there.
Thank you. Yeah, we're having a lot of fun this month with the Devil's Reign crossover and all that stuff.
Yeah, me too. I've got to do some recordings for To Know Her Is to Fear Her as well. Another cracker issue there. So looking forward to chatting with Saren. But yes,
excited to read that one too.
Oh, you should, absolutely. If you love Secret Invasion, you'll love it.
Oh, nice.
Thank you, one and all. And as always, may Khonshu watch over the denizens of the night. Catch you later.
See you, everyone.
copyright and affiliated characters, stories and events are properties of Marvel Characters Incorporated. Materials used and discussed within the podcast are intended for critique and review purposes only under the fair dealing concept of the current Copyright Act. The views, information or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the copyright owners.
It's good and bad. Unfortunately for him, he kind of would get pigeonholed, wouldn't he? I mean, you can't rock up to something and want to play, I don't know, like a doctor or a surgeon. I mean, he just
right. A lawyer.
Oh God, wear a suit, he'd just rip it. He'd just flex and rip it. Or can you imagine him being a surgeon with the tools? They're like little tweezers in his huge mitts. Freaking hell.
Little tiny scalpel would look like a toothpick.
Oh, 6'5". He's massive. I think it's great.